Hey, welcome to day 5, the final day of our 5-day devotional with the golden mouth preacher, St. John Chrysostom. Hey, one of the scariest things I imagine that one can do is to teach a teenager to drive. Now, I've never taught a teenager to drive. I've only ever been taught, but I imagine it's scary. Why? Because as the adult, as the parent, you have to give up control of your car to someone who has no idea what they're doing. For instance, when the day that I got my permit, my dad surrendered control to the truck, allowed me to drive, and I accidentally went 65 in a 35, okay? Like, it's scary surrendering control specifically to teenagers because they have no idea what they're doing. And when it comes to life, especially in times of crisis, we often have a hard time surrendering control. Especially as Christians, we have a hard time surrendering control to God and trusting Him when it seems like everything is going crazy. But we have a good reason to surrender control to God, especially in these scary times. You want to know why? Because you never had control anyways. You don't sit on the throne. You don't sit on the driver's seat of the world. God does. And St. John Chrysostom actually points that out today. He's preaching on the passage in Matthew in which Jesus specifically commands us to not be anxious, specifically talking about food and clothing. Watch what St. John has to say about this passage. Hence it is clear that not our diligence, but the providence of God, even where we seem to be active, affects all, so that were He to forsake us, no care or anxiety, nor toil, nor any other thing will ever appear to come to anything, but all will utterly pass away. St. John tells us that even in the places where it seems like we're making all the difference, we're making all the money, we're getting the best job, whatever it is, God is actually the one in control. And if God were to just up and abandon us, no amount of worry, no amount of fear, no amount of hard work would amount to anything. Why? Because we're not in control, but God is, our great provider, the one who's watching over us, our great Father. And praise God, He hasn't abandoned us, but He's right there with us, in control, providing for us. And so that's why John tells us to obey the commandment. Now, I said that word specifically, the commandment, not the suggestion, but the commandment of Jesus to not be anxious, but to trust God to provide for us in every single thing that we need. But right now, it honestly seems like obeying that commandment is nearly impossible. The whole world around us has gone crazy. You probably know people right now that are full of fear. In fact, you probably know Christians that have sort of, jumped ship on trusting God and have gone crazy, full of fear, full of anxiety. Is it possible to obey the commandment to not be anxious? In fact, it is. And St. John gives us some encouragement. Listen to what he says. Let us not therefore suppose His injunctions or His commandments are impossible, for there are many who duly perform them, even as it is. And if thou knowest not of them, it is nothing marvelous, since Elijah too supposed he was alone, but was told, I have left unto myself 7,000 men. Whence it is manifest that even now there are many who show forth the apostolic life, like as the 3,000 then and the 5,000. And if we believe not, it's not because there are none who do well, but because we are far from so doing. Just to put it short, he compares our situation to Elijah. Elijah felt like there were no more righteous men, that there were no more prophets, like he was the last one, when in fact God had thousands of righteous men and righteous prophets serving Him. Right now, it may feel like even the church is just filled with fear and anxiety. And like the commandment to not be anxious is impossible. But St. John says that just like Elijah had thousands of others serving God, right now in the church, there are thousands of people choosing faith over fear. You may not know them. They may be in a different country. You may never see them, but God always has his people. And right now, there are some strong, faith-filled Christians choosing to serve God in the midst of this crisis. And if they are doing it, you can choose faith over fear too. And he kind of sticks it to us. He says, hey, if you don't choose to obey the commandment to not be anxious, it's not because it's impossible. It's just because you're not doing it. But be encouraged. There are thousands, let's say millions of Christians in the world right now choosing to obey God, choosing to be full of faith, and you can do it too. So here's my challenge to you. Here's my encouragement. If thousands, if millions of Christians are standing on faith, you choose faith today. Don't let fear, don't let anxiety overwhelm you, but know that God has not abandoned you. He's with you. He's on the throne. He's in control. And just as he's provided for you before, he's going to provide for you again. Today, let's heed the words of the golden mouth preacher. Let's stand in faith and not fear. You can do it. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this 5-day devotional with the golden mouth preacher himself, St. John Chrysostom. I hope you've enjoyed these words of ancient wisdom, and I hope that you can continue through this crisis full of faith, trusting God, knowing that he's going to get us through it. I'm praying for you, and I love you.